Hi, it's Tony again, and we're back on the bench. And this evening we got another conventional classic with this Beachmaster 155, and it's got the original box, and the box is in actually great shape. As you can see, this is definitely an older generation, and it shows the list price and the yardage of number 9 braided line, I would assume, but 3-to-1 gear ratio. Let's have a look and see what it's about. We're going to be servicing this reel, and this is the metal spool, obviously, and it's got some line on it. I'll put that off to the side, and very clean reel already, considering its age. Looks like it's in great shape, so that's a good thing. And this actually still has a little book in it of how to care for your Penn reels, so that's neat. So yeah, the Beachmaster has been around for a long time. Penn introduced this reel in about 1941, and it lasted all the way up until about 2003, I think. So it's definitely been around. But just a little side note, I recently serviced a Penn Monofill 25, and if you put these two next to each other, they're pretty much the same reel, I'd say. I think the line capacity might just be a hair more for the Beachmaster, but they have the same gear set, same gear ratio, same innards, same bearings, you name it. Most of it is there. The frame posts are the same. Even the stand mount is the same on both of them. So they're both very similar. But the monofill was only around between the late 50s and the 70s or early 70s, whereas the Beachmaster's been around a lot longer in its duration. But outside of the plates and the color, pretty much the same. So just a little side note, but we're going to get into this and we're going to have a look and see what it looks like on the inside. But it's nice to see these reels really clean like this, because that doesn't always happen, and it makes it really difficult to work on. I'd say this one probably has not been apart that much, and obviously it hasn't been fished that much either, so that's probably a good thing. Either that, or somebody did fish it a lot and they just took stellar care of it. Now, one little trick you can do here if you're having a hard time taking this off like I am is you can just back off the star wheel so that the handle will just pop right off. Handle's in good shape. There's a little bit of baked grease on here. We'll clean that off, no problem. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing signs of old grease on here. Yeah, you can see right here, but nothing unusual. So let's just clean that stuff up right now. We'll get the paper towel out here and see what we can do with this. This is probably going to call for the help of some WD-40, so we'll start getting that going on in there. And we'll throw these parts and pieces in here too while we're at it, I guess, just to help break that up. And maybe what we'll do here is just clean this off here the best that we can. Still on there. Sometimes you just kind of have to scrub at it and work it a little bit. Get a little bit more penetrating oil on that. And it's starting to loosen up. But yeah, the Beachmaster is a great casting reel, designed for surf fishing, of course, or bank fishing. I've had 2 or 3 of them that I've gone through over the years, and they've all been great reels. There was one that I had that was not in the best shape, but it was perfect for taking like rock fishing from the shores and stuff like that. And if it got a little banged up, you weren't too worried about it. But then I've had another one where it was just in really good shape, and it actually had a scene tail plate, which this one does not, but it had a pretty beach scene with the fishermen on it, and those are pretty to look at as well. Wound up selling that one off at a certain point. Now I wish I kept it, but we'll take off the handle side here now. We'll let the WD-40 kind of sink in on those parts there, because some of that grease is pretty thick, and it'll just help to let the penetrating oil do its thing. But yeah, great model, and probably why it lasted for so long the way that it did. The Surfmaster, of course, is popular, as well as the Jigmaster and the infamous Squidder, which a lot of people are familiar with. And this is about the same size as a lot of those reels. The Jigmaster is a little bigger and has a totally different gear set in it, but the Beachmaster, the Squidder, and the Surfmasters are all very much so in the same category, the same family of Penn reels per se. Now note that there are two shorter screws down here at the seat holes, whereas the frame post screws are longer. Just want to make a little note of that. Yeah, this reel is in very good shape considering its age, and I would guess that this one is probably, if it is the original one that came in that box, I'm going to say this is probably a 50s reel, or maybe a 60s reel. A little dry, a little dirty on the inside, but not bad. So have a look on this side here. Pretty much the same deal. It's mostly just dry. So what we'll do here is we'll pull our bearing out just for good measure and just have a little look in here. I'll just take a little wire brush here to this. We could change out this bearing. I don't think it's really necessary. I think it just needs to be re-lubed, essentially. So that's easy to do. So what I like to do here in this situation is we'll just put a little bead of oil on that thread. Before we put this back, we'll take the Q-tip and just kind of probe that area there a little bit, get any of those old contaminants out of our hair. Thread this back on, like so. It feels good. So we'll take some blue grease and we'll hit up our bearing on that side, and also our click tongue. Give that a little bit of grease, like so. You don't have to go overboard with any of that stuff. And then while we're here, we're also going to do a little bead of oil here. These threads are looking a little on the dry side here. And I might actually want to do that on the other side. I probably will, but I won't do it on video just to kind of save time, but I more than likely will thread oil on the other side of those frame posts too. But just so you got the idea. You know, some reels you want to do like a major tune-up. Other reels you want to do a minor tune-up. Some of them, they just need a complete total overhaul, full restore kind of thing. And it just kind of depends on the situation. If I was working on this reel for a customer, so to speak, I would definitely be making sure that I know what it is that they want done with the reel. If they just want the basic service or the more in-depth service. And then, of course, when it comes to restore projects, you might be replacing a lot of chrome pieces and things like that, which luckily we're not in that boat tonight, so that's a great thing. Okay, so that section's all done. Now we're going to get into our innards here. We're going to take our 4 bridge screws out. Yeah, these are a little tight, a little snug. Probably have not been taken out that much, I'm going to guess. When we go to put them back, we'll put some oil on those threads, and that'll be good. But yeah, these screws are pretty clean, I think. They're just they've been in there a long time. I am seeing some dried up grease kind of around the edges of these screws, so that's kind of an indicator that it's been sitting a while. And that one's loaded with some oil there. Try to zoom in on that. You can see that that's really loaded with oil. It doesn't surprise me because it's right below the lube point right here, the one-shot lubricating point that Penn was popular for. Okay, but we're just gonna have a look here. So yeah, I mean there is a lot of grease hanging around in there. Definitely could use a little bit of cleaning, actually, a little bit more than I was anticipating. So let's have a look. So we've got our dog. It's dirty and it's got some old baked grease on there, so we're gonna have to do something about that. We've got our drag stack. We got our fiber washer that's kind of stuck on there, and take him off. Got our bridge. And yeah, I mean, we can see on the inside of here. So yeah, it actually is quite dirty in here. It might be a little difficult to see, but there's just this big buildup of this old like baked grease on there, so to speak. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to spend some time cleaning all these parts and components with the help of some Q-tips and some wire brushes on the gear set, things of that sort. And then once I have all these pieces cleaned up, we'll come back and we'll get into doing our lubing points and greasing points. We'll get into the bridge sleeve here and the drive shaft and all those kinds of things. So we'll just be back in a minute. Okay, so we're back, and we got a bunch of our parts and pieces cleaned up here, and bridge is cleaned up. So we're going to take our shaft off of here real quick and see what it looks like underneath there. I'm going to do this off camera. You got to punch out that little pin that's right there, and so you can access the drive shaft. But sometimes this happens, working on these old reels, they're really dirty on the inside. In this case, it wasn't so much dirty as it was filled with old grease, I would say. So we got our pin punched out. You should be able to grab it with a pair of needle nose, or regular pliers is fine too. And pull that off, and that really doesn't look that bad. We're just going to clean that up a little bit, like so. Nice clean. And grab some more Q-tips. This has definitely been a Q-tip project. Clean off any excess that's hiding in there. Okay, so at this point we'll lubricate our main drive shaft here. Now I've done both blue grease and oil on this. I'm actually going to do oil on this one, and I've had success with both, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. It's just kind of a preference. Put our pin back into place. Should be able to just give a little tap with the hammer. Go back in flush like so. And that's spinning real nicely. Okay. Now we've got our fiber washer, our red fiber washer, that needs to go back over on the sleeve before you attach the rest of your stuff here. So this is all still dirty. I have not cleaned all this up yet, obviously, so we're gonna have a look at these washers and see what we're in for here. There's definitely some old lubricants on here, and it looks like we've got some old leather washers on there. Now if this was a showpiece reel, I would probably just leave these leather washers in, but I might actually want to use this someday, this reel, and I think it would be good just to change out those leather washers, so we're going to do that, I think. even though these are in pretty good shape. But this one, as you can see, is actually split, and there's no sense in reusing that stuff. So main gear looks good. We're just gonna wash it down with a little bit of WD-40. Let that work its way in there. But all in all, not too bad at all, really. Pretty clean. There's a little bit of what might be a sign of a little bit of pitting and rust on the inside of this gear set, but it's minimal. It's really not bad. So we'll take that. And I like to take a little toothbrush or sometimes a wire brush, depending on how thick the contaminants are in the teeth. In this case, they're not that thick. Just clean up these teeth the best that you can. Get all that old residual stuff out of there. Yeah, nice clean gear. Okay. Just going to dry off the inside of that because we don't want any of that WD-40 hanging around the drag washers or anything like that. Clean that up real good. Okay. So now we're ready to put that back over our sleeve, main gear. Get it to go back on. Sometimes that pin just needs to be tapped just a little bit more than I did, so I'll give that one another little nudge. See if we can get this to go over now. There we go. Okay. Now we're definitely going to be cleaning up these washers here. So as you can see, this has some baked oil and grease on there. So what I'm probably going to do here is just throw all these in here. We're going to let some WD-40 do its magic on those. And while we're letting that sink in, we're just going to remove our old leather washers, get those out of the way. And we do have some fresh carbon HT100 washers that are appropriate for this model, so I'm just going to bust those out. And we'll get our Cal's Universal Star Drag grease on there as well. Clean up these washers the best that we can. Got our keyed washer. Yeah, you can just see all the dirt and grime and stuff that's built up on this towel that I have here. So this is a good example here of the grease getting baked on there, as I like to call it. And sometimes just the help of some steel wool will take this off. In this case, it's pretty thick and pretty heavy. Just do this on a slightly flatter surface here. Take this off. But steel wool does work, and it's a simple, cheap thing to use for this kind of stuff, so I do recommend it. I do recommend using the WD-40 to loosen up those contaminants too, but you definitely don't want that grease baking on these washers, because what it'll do is it'll affect the operation of your drag. But you can just see that hardened grease that's on there. Just take some of that off, but you can see what that does right there. And then the spring washer has it really bad, actually, baked on there, so we're going to do what we can to rub that off. Sometimes just taking your fingernail and curling it off is even a more practical solution. But yeah, you definitely want these clean, free of all these contaminants and these old greases and oils and things like that. You want all that stuff off of there. Just rinse that off in some more WD-40. Okay. That's pretty good. All right, so now we're ready to put our drag stack in. We'll get our universal star drag grease out. We'll do a light film on our fiber washers here, just ever so light. Put our metal washer in, another fiber washer. Keyed washer, fiber washer. Metal washer, and our spring washer. And that's our drag stack. So put this away. We'll apply some blue grease to our main gear, like so. Okay. And now we're ready to put all of our other little parts and pieces back together here. I'm just going to clean off this ring here real quick. I did have to soak this in some WD-40 overnight. There was a lot of buildup of old grease down in here, which is not an unusual thing. And it just liked to kind of bake itself in there, so to speak. And so I wanted to loosen up all those old contaminants there. And I'm just going to take the Q-tip in here one more time and just kind of probe this area. You know, the bearing looks fine, I think. I don't really feel that this reel was used a lot before it came to me, so I don't think there's any need to change that out. So we'll take our blue grease to that bearing in there, and we'll hit that up just with a little bit of blue grease, and then we'll hit our eccentric as well. A little bit of blue grease here, like so. And then we'll take our pinion yoke. We're going to apply some blue grease to both sides of that. Put our pinion yoke into place, or pinion gear, like so. Okay. So we've got two springs that go into place like that, in those holes. And we're going to put our yoke into place, and then we've got our eccentric jack that goes on top. Got to line that up like so. And that's all good, and then you're ready to apply your main gear, bridge assembly, as we call it. There goes the pinion gear. And I find that this is the easiest way to do this, is to hold the bridge like this in this position, and then insert like so. Then you can roll your bridge piece around slowly on top of the pinion gear, and then you want to hold it in this position. And then comes the fun part with the dog ratchet. You want to have that dog ratchet in place over that hole down there at the bottom. And then you need to feed your bridge screw set. Put a little bead of oil on these. They were a little difficult to take out, probably because they'd never been taken out before, more than likely. And then we got our dog spring. This seemed to have a pretty good dog on it, I think, in terms of its clicking and its ratcheting. So I think the spring is probably fine. Just lost part of it in there. Sometimes you gotta kind of back away the bridge a little bit to get some space when you do this, but it is doable, like that. And your your spring should curl around like that. And then you can roll your bridge assembly around. And then once you hear that click, that's the springs popping your pinion gear up. That's usually a good thing. And then you can seat your bridge screws. And I don't like to tighten these up right away, but just enough so that they line things up, but definitely don't snug them up. I'll put all of our others in like so. I like to kind of alternate back and forth with these, go this way and back. And definitely do not torque these down. You don't want to get hairline cracks or anything like that. I've said that many times in a lot of my other videos. And you definitely don't want to be doing it on the bearing either. You don't want to over torque that. Okay, so that's a good sounding dog. So we'll snug these up. Okay, now we'll apply some blue grease to our eccentric jack mechanism. I'll just put a little bit more here on the pinion gear on top. And that way all those metal parts will get some attention. Okay, so now we're ready to put this piece back on with the rest of the reel, essentially. Just gonna wipe this down one more time. These are really nice rings, of very good condition. Keep the smudge marks off. Okay, we'll put our frame post screws back into position. And the same deal here. I like to alternate kind of back and forth. Don't forget you got the two shorter screws that go down below. Sometimes you got to get this lined up just right. Snug them up ever so easily. And we already did apply our beads of oil in those frame posts, if you recall, so that's always a good thing, especially with this reel. It was pretty dry, I'd say, for the most part, in those threads. And when you combine the dryness with salt water and stuff like that, that's when you start having problems. A hard time getting this one started, but that can happen sometimes. And just be patient. Don't force anything. If it doesn't feel like it's quite right, it's probably because it's not quite right. So but as you can see, this reel really isn't that difficult to work on. So if you have one and you want to attempt to do some of the servicing on it, you can watch this video and you can see the steps and the different things that you can do, the things that I do at least. Okay, we're just going to double check our bridge screws and make sure all those are okay. Looks like they are. Okay. Put our sleeve back in. This had a lot of loaded baked grease on there, so I'm glad we got that out of the way. We'll put our star back on, and then our handle. Do a little bead of oil on there. Nice pretty handle. Kind of a yellowish color, I'd say. We'll do a little bead of oil on our threads in here for our handle nut. And we'll tighten that up. We got to get that lined up with our screw hole there, our locking screw. And definitely do a little bead of oil here on that thread, because I've snapped off a lot of these heads over the years on old rusted reels, and even if you hit them with the penetrating lubricants and stuff like that, sometimes they'll free up, sometimes they won't. But if you just keep those threads lubricated, a little bead of oil, it'll usually avoid those problems. Okay, so we're gonna try this out here and see how it feels. Feels pretty smooth. We got good free spool. And try our clicker out. Sounds good. So there you have it. That's the Beachmaster 155, all cleaned up and ready to go. So thanks for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.